Hi, everyone. This is the Leadership with Heart podcast, and this is Heather Younger, your host. Employee experience is powered by emotions. Managers and or leaders within organizations get to choose which emotions they unleash from within the people they lead. Leaders, meaning supervisors or above in organizations, drive much of the positive or negative emotions by their actions or inactions, their words, and what they fail to say. When a manager chooses their words and their actions carefully, they exhibit great emotional intelligence. These managers are often thought of as leaders who care, or as I like to call them, leaders with heart. This special brand of leader drives engagement and loyalty simply by being themselves. Are these leaders perfect? Absolutely not. It is in their awareness and sharing of some of their imperfections that we realize their brilliance. In this podcast, I ask you to see yourself in the stories my guests tell about times when they were not the best versions of themselves, but how they used their hearts to guide them to a place of deeper connection with their teams and heightened leadership prowess. Today, I am thrilled to have Kristi Turner on the phone. You do not want to miss this. Hello, everybody. This is Heather Younger, your host of the Leadership with Heart podcast. And today I'm so excited to have Kristi Turner on the phone. I actually asked Kristi to come on because a friend of mine and hers, actually, I was at a conference with them and I was asking, if she knew of anybody that would be great for the podcast. And she said, you know what? Do you remember Christy? And so Christy and me and this person that referred her actually worked together at a company that went through kind of a crazy mad culture shift and mergers and nutty stuff. And what this person reported to me is that, and I can attest to as well because I worked with her, is that Christy really held strong to her beliefs. She, made sure she challenged the executive team if they were going down a road that wasn't necessarily the best for the organization, for the people, and just again stood her ground and stayed true to her values. So that is why I have Kristi on. Welcome, Kristi.
Thank you, Heather. It's so good to connect again. I am happy to be on your show.
Awesome. Oh, I know. It's like getting together again with friends that you have. I mean, literally, we haven't seen each other in like 3-4 years, I think. It's been a while, right?
Just reconnecting with fellow rock stars, right? I have so much respect for you. 3 or 4 years ago when we had the opportunity to work together, and I've been watching your success and I've been listening to Leadership on Heart. I mean, it's just absolutely phenomenal. So congratulations on all your success.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. It's kind of interesting, as leaders, just kind of as you alluded to, people are watching us from afar all the time. They are gauging the type of leaders we are, the type of people that we are by what we do, but we're not even aware that they're watching. And so just this example right here is exactly right. How are you acting in front of your troops? So, Kristi, let us all know where it is you are right now in your leadership journey, where you are in your career.
Sure. So currently I have the great honor of being CMO, Chief Marketing Officer for a company named Compeat. And Compeat really serves the restaurant industry with restaurant management software. So in a nutshell, we help restaurants get key data analytics, business intelligence, insights into their operations, help them run their inventory, accounting systems, help them hire, schedule, pay employees. So we just basically help restaurants streamline their operations and help them become more profitable. And so as a CMO, my role, right, is to create a brand, a culture, a marketing plan that really inspires employees, customers, partners, prospects to want to engage with us, right, and be proud to be associated with Compeat. So that is my current role.
Oh, I love it. That role is so pivotal. I don't think that a lot of CMOs think of their role in such a holistic way as you described, knowing that the brand, whether it's the employer brand, it's the overall corporate brand, all of it speaks volumes, and it depends on the kind of volumes you want to put out there, right? And you have to be purposeful. So your role is just so key in that.
Absolutely, right? We can be a positive or negative influence, and we have to have accountability for that. And I think, to your point, a lot of people describe marketing as lead generation, trade shows, etc. And at the end of the day, right, our job is really to just kind of create brand awareness and tell the company story and tell the product story and tell the culture story and just get all of those types of the people we serve, right? From employees to customers to prospects to partners to want to engage with us, right? I mean, at the highest level, that's our job. Now, how we do that to your point, right, is trade shows and events and campaigns and everything else. But our true accountability is to just drive that brand awareness and get people to want to engage with us.
Well, it's interesting. So there's one word you even said, even just in that description, is the people that we serve. Again, using that type of language, and knowing, I know you again, that you believe that to be the case. More organizations need to be thinking about, like, all these different audiences, all these different stakeholders are those that you serve. And so, having that lens on when you're acting. And the other thing is, how you do it, maybe to the trade shows and the kind of tactical things that you do to drive leads or to help with a brand. But the other thing is, marketing, which what I think internally, I've been in organizations that don't necessarily do a great job at this. And it's thinking about internal communication, that brand that you're doing in order to kind of retain people, to keep the culture going, as you mentioned culture. And I do think marketing has a hand in that. They don't necessarily take an active role in how are we putting together our communication strategy for our internal team to understand when products are rolling out, to understand when shows are happening and how they should be promoting that to the customer. So just like having that plan and that strategy in place, I think that culturally it makes a huge difference, and your department makes a big impact in that way.
Absolutely. No question. I think, culture comes from the individual employees, right? Not from marketing, not from leadership, but the individual unique set of employees you have in a company in any given time. However, to your point, right, marketing's got to tell that story, and the brand personality, right? The way we present ourselves, the way we speak in internal communications and external communication has a huge influence on that, right? But it truly is the group of employees that are with the company at any given time that create the culture.
Yes. I love it. I love it. Okay, so tell us where that drive to lead comes from. Again, all I know you as is the leader, as a chief marketing officer, an executive team member. And so, what is it? Where does that come from? Where did you get that kind of secret sauce to want to lead?
Great question. And I would only expect great questions from you, Heather. But that, I think it's never one thing, right? But I think I absolutely love seeing growth. I love seeing employees grow, right? Both personally and professionally. I love seeing customers' bottom line grow because of a product they used, right, from us. I love seeing our own company bottom line grow, right, after serving a customer, correctly and for many years, and just kind of the overall health of a company grow, and as a parent, which is also kind of, quote, a leadership role, right?
Yep.
I love seeing my kids grow, right? I want them to be independent, contributing members of society as young adults. So watching that growth over the years. So I literally get giddy, right? when I can see or say that I had a small hand in any of those types of growth, right? As a leader of a company, or as a manager, or as a parent, it's truly kind of the most thrilling high you can experience is watching individuals and companies or teams or organizations grow and succeed. And I think that's what kind of keeps the drive in me as a leader.
Oh, I love that. I love it. I'm kind of that same way. I think that's the reason why I'm a people and an organizational developer, right? Because I'm driven to see that positive change happen. And I usually will see the tiniest of changes in people and in organizations when they may not see it. And it's so exciting.
I couldn't agree more.
Okay, so tell us how would you describe your leadership style? And then after having said that too, after you define the style, can you let us know maybe if there was one event that really helped to shape that style?
Sure. So first of all, I think describing my leadership style, it's a little odd, right? Because I think that question's more for those I'm responsible for leading, right? Like if I'm doing a good job or not, they can be the judge of that. But I can tell you what I strive to be as a leader, right? And I think there's a complex blend that I've learned from others, or I strive to lead with, which is integrity, authenticity, being transparent, humility is a big one, right? We all make mistakes. We're all imperfect. Kind of showing your team that, hey, we made a mistake. Now we're going to correct. Admitting failures, learning from failures, but doing it with confidence, right? It's not so much apologizing. It's just more, this is our world, right? None of us are perfect, and giving them permission to push and grow and make mistakes and have successes. And I think, I try to be kind of the truth barometer, in an organization, or a change agent, or, value driven or servant, driven leadership. There's so many ways to kind of describe what I strive for. But the ultimate high is really more about making a difference, right, in the lives of our employees or customers, while simultaneously driving a healthy bottom line. So as a leader, you have to do all three of those, right? It's a very challenging, complex trio to achieve simultaneously. There's always ebbs and flows and highs in one area, while there's a low in another area for, in your short-term sprints. But I have a very passionate belief that happy employees equal happy customers equal happy bottom line. And I also believe that employees and customers, quote, happiness, right, is driven by personal relationships, trust, and feeling valued. So it's never just about the product, or about the price, or about the salary you're paying an employee. It's the way you treat your employees, or the way you treat your customers, that really drives the bottom line success more than anything. Now, don't get me wrong, right? We got to have a good product. It's required, but it can quickly become table stakes, and you have to have fair market pricing, right? That's essential. Mm-hmm. And you have to pay employees fair market salary. But at the end of the decision process that a customer goes through, or an employee goes through, 9 times out of 10, it comes down to, do I trust this company? Do I trust these people? Do I trust the leadership? Do I want to become part of this community? And so, to me, that's a leadership style. If you keep those things you have that belief system, right? And I think at the end of the day, customers will never love a company until the employees love a company first. And that goes back to what you were referencing before, which is why culture is so important, right?
Yes, I love that. And now, so is there, when I hear all of this, because you are so very specific in how you define it and what you stand for, I mean, it's very clear, and I'm sure the listeners can hear kind of that passion, that very
opinionated,
confident, right? You can hear it. It's a little bit like, it's a hard-headedness about what you believe, which I think is great. That's what we want, right? But is there something that shaped you? Let's say a parent, an upbringing, something that shaped that frame of view, that growth mode, the fact that you're very strategic and holistic in your view. You don't look at yourself in a narrow way. You look at yourself and what you do and your team does in a bigger way. Does that come from someplace?
Well, I don't think there's ever one event, right? So to your point, was it family? Was it upbringing? Was it experience? I think it's all of those, right? I think from my parents, my mother's one of the most ethical people I have, probably the most ethical person I've ever met in my entire life. So obviously that's a heavy, heavy influence. It's just, there were things that were right and there were things that were wrong, and you just did the right thing, right? Regardless of consequences. So I witnessed that my whole life. But from a business perspective, I think it was really, and I think of it from a leadership perspective. Well, and I'll back up a little bit to the family. I'm also from a huge family, right? A very large family. So when you're from a large family, you, from the time you are born, are dealing with a lot of different personalities, right? and so I think that also has an influence of actually being empathetic to different personalities, and getting along. And frankly, I still have an amazing family. So, I was surrounded by a lot of love and support, which I think gives you a lot of confidence. But on the business side, I don't want to talk about my age, but let's just say over 27 years in the business world, right? I've worked with kind of at every level, right? I kind of worked my way up from the bottom. So I've seen kind of almost every leadership style and scenario and got to watch and observe. And so I'd say my leadership style is kind of equally influenced by watching the best leaders or really good leaders and the worst leaders, right? And I think you learn from both. And so I watched some of the best leaders where I witnessed how they inspired, how they led, how they kind of fought for doing the right thing for a customer or an employee. And you can tell that they truly cared, right? And the result of that, as I watched it, was they had a very loyal following, right? So you end up with lower employee churn. You end up with lower customer churn. You end up with greater customer revenue because you led by caring, and they created a vision that everyone could get excited about. So they were inspirational, right? But at the same time, they pushed you hard to do better and better, while they simultaneously kind of convinced you that you could do better and better, right? So there was they had confidence in you. So you watch that from the best leaders. And then the opposite of that is, unfortunately, all of us, including myself, have witnessed the worst leaders, right? That are very controlling, degrading. They may choose to lead by fear, right? With threats. If you don't make this number, you're fired. Or, if you're not in the office by this time, you must not be working. Or they're moody, or they lose their temper, or they have a problem, but they don't really participate with the team and coming up with a solution. And, literally I had one leader, right, many years ago that punched a hole in the wall from frustration, right, because of a technology outage. And it's like, it's almost like 2-year-old tantrum behavior, right? You're like, that's not gonna help the situation. So again, I've observed all these leaders, good and bad, and at the end, I'm kind of picking up qualities. And again, let's be honest, over 27 years, right? Not over 1 year or 2 years. And it's like I kind of tried to pick qualities of those I admired, and then I passionately avoided the qualities from some of the worst leaders, right? And then you end up with kind of this unique blend that makes up you as a leader. So that's why I say, is there one event? Never, right? But are there significant events, both from the top leaders that you got the honor of observing and the worst leaders that you were afraid or fearful and what you didn't want to turn around and become? I think that's what kind of creates your individual unique leadership style.
The one thing that hits me, and I know we didn't go deep, I'm not going to go too deep on it, but I love that foundation that your mother gave. Me being a mother of 4 children, it frames almost so much of what I do pretty much in the leadership space. And it has enriched me to be able to be a better leader, as I go along. And I see even them individually, how they're all turning out to be so different. And a couple of them are like, ooh, I'm not sure I want you to be my manager,
Absolutely.
I kind of like that one because you're really nurturing. And so I also find that, to a certain extent, we might all have biases to what we see as more positive, negative, even though there's probably that kind of strand that goes through all of our stories. Like the idea of, do they truly care? Do they inspire? Do they set a vision? Do they help us grow? Do they see the better in us? Those kinds of things that you already mentioned, right? So it's just kind of interesting, listening to that, but also, hearing, how foundationally you were given that, because I hear in so much that you talk about this clarity around what is right, what is wrong, what I'm going to do, how I'm not going to go outside those, guardrails. And that started with your mother. So it's just interesting point. Interesting.
Absolutely. And like you, right? My mother had 4 children. I have 2. My brother has 10. My sisters have 2 each. And, it's every single one of us and my nieces and nephews and my own children are opposite, right? Like they're all unique. They're all different. And that's the beauty of it. But I think you can have standards of ethics and values, and while still honoring the unique soul, right, that each child is, because they shouldn't be alike. They're born different, right? And you got to nurture their uniqueness and their pros and cons and their strengths and weaknesses. And that's how they turn out very differently, but that's exactly how they're supposed to turn out, right? And I think, my mother, again, did a fantastic job of raising all four of us, and we are all four extremely different, right? I'm a marketing executive. My other sister's an ER nurse, and my brother's a missionary. It's like we couldn't be more different, yet we are so similar in several ways. And I think it comes down to core values, ethics, work ethic, right? Hardworking. And then you just hope, like you say, that you're passing that on, right, to your children.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because that, of course, is going to, you should have seen this coming. That makes me think of just organizations, okay? Mm-hmm. There are some arguments out there that when we think, some people are very against organizational norms, values, behaviors, mission, just all of that stuff, because they feel like it's trying to put people in a box, that everybody has to walk around being robotic and saying and being the same people. And what I loved about what you just said, and I think there's a very valid parallel to be made here, is there can be standards of ethics and values and norms, right? But that there's this way that if an organization still can lift up the uniqueness that's inside of each of their people, knowing that there's just a baseline of how we're all going to act and behave, then we can still kind of, we can thrive, we can flourish, and people know that they're still appreciated for who they are. They can bring their very best to the table, but knowing that we all have to kind of act in a very baseline, standardized way in certain areas. I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah, amen. But I think that it's, again, you hire to your weaknesses, right, as a leader. So by nature of that, most likely some of the people you manage are not like you, right? Because they have a different set of strengths and weaknesses. But the power of that for an organization to have very different perspectives approaching the same problem. And I'll have to give a shout out to my current CEO. He did a really, really good job of hiring around his weaknesses in the executive team, and also making sure he had very different personalities, right, as his direct reports. So when we huddle around a problem, we truly look at it from 5 completely different perspectives, right? And approaches and solutions. But the power that comes out of that is, at the end of the day, when we make a decision, we can kind of have the confidence that we looked at it from a 360-degree angle, right? Because you have all of those perspectives. So you want that same type of dynamic differences in your own team, because it's more valuable, right? When you're solving problems, when you're thinking of solutions, when you're trying to be creative, you want those different perspectives. And I think where organizations and companies can go very, very wrong is when the board or the executive or even the marketing team is all acts the same. Well, by nature, you're not going to get a great perspective. And that's where diversity comes in. That's where different personalities, you've got a creative brain, you've got an analytical brain, you've got, again, different strengths and weaknesses, and it makes your company so much more powerful. But to your point, at the value level, you have to treat each other with respect. You have to demand integrity. You have, so there's those values or ethics that you can put in an organization that ensure the treatment of your customers, the treatment of your partners, the treatment of each other is at a high standard while still respecting all those differences.
Oh, I love that. I think about, as we talk just around this diversity issue, it makes me think of, so sometimes we talk about racial and ethnic diversity, we talk about gender diversity, things like that. But I'm thinking about one time I was part of a leadership team, and we had done a 360 review. So all of us had done 360 and got 360 feedback. And I remember us sitting around the table kind of having these discussions. This is just the leadership team who went through it. And after we went through and we saw like how everybody was gauged, and there was another thing we had done. It was like a red, yellow, blue something kind of program where they like, anyway, in that situation, I realized that I was definitely a more diverse person when it comes to mindset, because I want to say it was like red, yellow, blue, green. And I was the only yellow sitting at the table. And I was like, I always wondered why I felt like an alien, sitting at this table. Because I was like, nobody's seeing my assignment. No one understands. And then in that moment, it gave me clarity to know why I always felt so different. And again, having nothing at all to do with the other stuff that's external that might be different.
Absolutely.
I'm talking about the internal mindset. It was just so different. So it's just interesting. But they needed me at the table, just like we need everybody. We need to have that presence there of different thought processes. So
we all have a different set of experiences, right? And that different set of experience gives us a unique perspective, and it's valuable.
So tell our listeners about a time when maybe you weren't the best leader, or the leader that you could be, I guess, really proud of, or you maybe had to make a decision, or you made a decision, or you took an action, or you failed to act a certain way. And then how did you come out of that to just kind of refresh yourself and become that better leader again?
Tough question, Heather. Tough question. and again, back to all of our imperfections, right? There's never one event, but probably one that comes to mind is when I was a young leader, right? When I was kind of first put in management, I was young, so I didn't know what I didn't know yet. And, I was under one of the kind of bad leaders we talked about before. There was a moment I remember where he really overreacted, right? And basically came in and simply blessed me out, right? In a very aggressive way. Just anger and frustration, but really unprofessional, not a high emotional intelligence type encounter, we'll say. And instead of taking a breath and kind of centering myself, I, in a reaction mode, right, went to my direct reports and basically kind of passed on that fear that I was feeling, right, at the time. Now, of course, I didn't bless them out like he did. I took it down several notches, but I definitely used a fear tactic, and that's just not my authentic style at all, right? So I kind of crossed that line of betraying myself, and I didn't stop the bad behavior, right? I passed it on, again, at a lower degree, but I still passed it on. And so, what's the saying? How does that saying go? Hurt people. And however, now to your point, how did I recover from that? I just think with experience, I think I handle situations very differently. Hopefully at my age and with my years of experience, I have a higher emotional intelligence to help kind of calm upper management and have answers for them right in that initial interaction, and help them see a situation differently, or have more knowledge and confidence in whatever it is we're discussing and an area of responsibility. And then I don't pass it on to my team, right? I definitely give my team constructive criticism and feedback. I create sense of urgencies in situations. I have very high expectations of them, but I do it in more of a collaborative way. And my goal really is always to kind of create the relationships with my team members, or even other cross-functional teams, so that they want to go beyond the call of duty, or they want to work hard for me or work hard for the company because their heart's in it. I don't really do the fear tactic. And so I think all the mistakes we've all made, you kind of learn from them, and you can flip them, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, how do you actually get through that? Because, I would say even for the most senior or most, seasoned leader, it would be hard sometimes to come out of that particular, because I know how heated some of these, leadership meetings can get, and folks just kind of, like you said, the person who hits the wall and puts a hole in it kind of thing. And then you're supposed to walk out with a smile on your face, especially in marketing, right? Again, it's all about the message. It's all about the story. It's all about the brand. How did you evolve? I know, we have the age behind us, we have the time, the experience, but what do you think that it allows you now to more easily flip out of a situation like that?
Well, so a couple of things. I think, one, I choose very carefully who I work for. So I usually don't take jobs that have that type of personality. So I really have a respect for the leadership team I'm part of. So that's one. So that doesn't happen often. That's one thing. Second thing is, I wouldn't say, even when you have intensity and you've got a lot of pressure on you, right? That's part of the job. That's what we sign up for as leaders. And there is a lot of stress and pressure, but I don't believe in having an intense kind of upper management discussion and walking out with a smile on my face. I think because that can be a little inauthentic, right? Mm-hmm. I would say there's a balance where I walk out with a concern on my face, right? And it's like, because I think employees truly respect transparency and honesty. And so it's not about flipping it to a smile. It's flipping it to more of, okay, let me think how I can frame this, how I can be really, really honest and just say, hey, we've got this problem. And it's a real problem, and we've got to figure out answers to it. And I want to bring you guys in, and I want you to know the problem, and I want you to be part of the solution. So let's, make them part of it. That's not putting a smile on my face and coming out and going, everything's fine, everything's great, right? Because again, that's inauthentic. So I think there's a way to do it to where you're really honest with employees. When a company's got, a big customer service issue or a financial problem or a competitive, attack, you want the employees to know about it, right? You want them to get kind of fired up. You want them to kind of start thinking with you solutions. And there's real power in that. So I don't think we as leaders need to put a smile on our face. I think the smile on our face comes from, we want to make sure we love what we do, and they know that we're happy to be there, and they know that we're confident in the long-term success of the company. But I don't think we need to fake that everything's perfect. I think that can be a real mistake. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with you. I've always leaned on the side of more transparency too, but sometimes there is that line, and you walk out of that meeting where it's totally heated, and I think the brilliance is in the taking the time to breathe, think through, figure out how you're going to frame that discussion that you're then going to have with the team to then bring them in and kind of come up with that solution jointly. And so I think the brilliance is in that in-between slot, right? Where none of us are perfect, by the way. I know that's probably my weakest point as a leader, taking that time to slow down, to breathe, and to think, and to kind of recalibrate before I go into a discussion with a team to kind of start problem solving. Absolutely. So that was helpful. Thank you for kind of taking us through that as well. So for leaders who might be listening right now, someone who may be maybe just either struggling with that whole idea, like bringing the team in to help, or just in any area of their leadership, in their leadership space, what might be some parting words you might have for them?
So exactly what you just said. When it gets stressful, take a walk, take a breath, right? Pause. But I think at the highest level, it's find you and love what you do. So, don't be a carbon copy of another leader. Make sure that you get the formula that works for you, and learn exactly what we were just saying. Learn from others, the best and the worst, and come up with your kind of unique combination. And, I kind of have a manifesto in life or on leadership. And Heather, I think you've probably heard me say this before, but I truly believe that we kind of all have a unique soul signature, right? That we're meant to contribute to this world. Mm-hmm. But the first step is trying to figure that out, right? And get a clear definition within yourself of, what does success look like for me? What type of leader do you want to be? And by the way, that definition can change at different points in your life, but it has to be authentic to you. And just don't accept kind of that broad definition or society's definition or the business world's definition of what a leader should be. You got to really define it for yourself. And being a leader, it's just this opportunity to have a broader sphere of influence to do good in this world, and the job provides this connection to many intelligent and dynamic individuals that you would have never met otherwise. And it kind of gives you the opportunity to create a great place to work. Could be for hundreds of people, and challenge your own self-growth, both intellectually and spiritually. So it's never about kind of, I always say, the tyranny of or, but having to choose one thing at the cost of another. It's always the genius of right? And focusing on all elements of your life as a leader that have the highest value and enjoyment to you. So you said this earlier, right? My kids, being a parent, has made me a stronger leader in the corporate world. And being a leader in the corporate world has by far made me a better parent. But at the same time, at any point, if I'm not making a difference for a company that I'm working for, I have no business being there. And if a job on the other side, if a job is destroying my personal life, it's time to leave. So if I'm not giving and receiving simultaneously in a leadership position, it's just kind of time to move on. So I go back to young leaders. It's really create your own definition of success and show up for all aspects of your life. Show up for your family, your career, yourself, and do it unadulterated authenticity, accountability, and confidence, right? At different points in your life, it's going to be different, but show up in every moment, right? With that powerful blend of authenticity, humility, self-confidence. And when you do that, I feel like each individual will create kind of this tsunami of power that ignites good, in the world and everybody around you. And that's what makes you a great leader. And the impact you can have, it's just epic. And the high you get out of serving others, it is simply epic. So, I think for leaders, that's the advice I'd give them.
Oh, wow, is what I would say, Kristi Turner. I love the tsunami of power that ignites good. Oh, goodness. That is just that's going to be with me all day today. And hopefully for the listeners, you'll take away all of the amazing nuggets that she put forward to us today. And this has been amazing, Kristi. So for those who are listening in and might want to reach out to you because of all this awesomeness, what's the one way they might get a hold of you?
Oh, you're being too kind, but thank you so much. And LinkedIn, obviously, I'm under Kristi Hammelrick Turner, which is Kristi Hammelrick Turner. And then Twitter, I'm at KTurnerOA. And email is kristi.turner@compeat.com, Kristi.turner. Love to hear from anybody.
Awesome. And what I'll do too for the listeners, when the show notes will come out with this, and in it will be this contact information will be in there. So if you didn't have a chance to write it down, that's okay. Kristi, this has been amazing. I have learned on my own and you have inspired me today and I love it. So thank you so much for joining us.
And ditto to you, Heather. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. You can grab the show notes by visiting customerfanatics.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter.